Mark, and you've been looking at the EU and what's been happening, matters around COVID, I think.
Yeah, let me at that during extra, that Mary Bowman thing, just let me at it. But anyway, we're revisiting what I reported on last week, the International COVID Summit 3, Part 2 at the European Parliament in Brussels, which happened on or around the 3rd of May this year. And I just wanted to do a little update that there's another aspect to this, and we need to look at it objectively. You'll notice in that first slide, you could see the ECR logo in the background. And we'll talk about that in a moment, and we'll move on from there. This is revisiting a slide I had last week, the Maine physicians suspended for COVID misinformation. This is Meryl Nass. And not only did the state of Maine Board of Licensure immediately suspend her license as a doctor for false COVID-19 information, but they actually ordered her to undergo a neurophysiological evaluation for having wrongthink. And that's just something to keep in mind, something to stress, just how serious it's getting. Now, that ECR group that was partially behind that European Union Parliament split-off group that held that conference, that ECR group is the European Conservatives and Reformists, ECR. And this is a little bit about what they're about. Cooperation, yes. Superstate, no. Now, that's interesting because, and I want you guys to correct me if I'm wrong or if you think I'm going off par here, I believe the EU already is a superstate. So to say cooperation, yes, superstate, no, would seem to be kind of a tardy statement at best, in my opinion. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. This is looking at the ECR a little more closely. They have an EU-UK policy working group. They have the ECR policy group on migration. They have the European tour on the Conference of the Future of Europe. ECR carbon sinks working. Carbon sinks, we talked about that last week, where the banker Mark Carney, the former central banker of both Canada and England, has been accused of supporting deforestation. And if he's so pro-climate change, how can he be in favor of deforestation? Because forests are carbon sinks that take excess carbon out of the atmosphere. It's called photosynthesis as part of that. And we have other things. The one in the lower left you can't quite read, but the ECR group, European Conservatives and Reformists, also has a pro-family unit. So this is just taking a little broader view of what this group's about. They say they're safeguarding borders and things like that as well. Now, that's just kind of an FYI thing. So we have a broader, more objective view of what that conference was about. And then one of the things that the Associated Press and American Press was doing in their fact-checking of that conference and calling out Meryl Nass as if she was committing grave sins when she was only one of 22 speakers there. And as I mentioned last week, they reported on that event in a very thin-sliced manner and only accused Meryl Nass of stating some falsehoods without even mentioning the broad scope and 22 some odd speakers at that event, including the well-known U.S. physician, Dr. Robert Malone, very skeptical, of course, of the COVID vaxes and very aware of the adverse effects and deaths that are resulting from those vaxes, or really mRNA injections. But another thing that the media was saying that was essentially not true was that someone was saying that there's 100-day vaccines, 100-day development vaccines on the horizon. Well, it turns out that CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, or CEPI, in fact, is saying this. Here's the headline: the Global Pandemic Preparedness Summit. This is a different event. On the road to 100-day vaccines. International policymakers, scientists, and representatives of industry, philanthropy, and civil society were united at the Global Pandemic Preparedness Summit, co-hosted in London by the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, or CEPI, and the UK government back in March of 2022, in endorsing the ambition to have safe, effective, and globally accessible vaccines against the next pandemic threat ready in just 100 days. But the devil in the details will be in realizing this goal, from raising the US $3.5 billion required by CEPI to deliver on its pandemic busting plan over the next 5 years, to realigning global regulatory systems, to scaling up manufacturing and ensuring supplies of everything down to rubber stoppers for vials. What is not in doubt is the fact that the world will face more deadly disease outbreaks with the potential to wreak havoc on lives and livelihoods in the years ahead. The fact that humanity has just been through one pandemic does not reduce the risk of being hit by another unknown pathogen, a so-called disease X. So, contrary to the fact checkers, there really are plans involving the UK government of 100-day vaccines. And of course, there it is. And the WHO, it's music to their ears that we can expect more and more outbreaks as time passes. So that's that for today, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mark. And of course, you've brought focus back onto the fact that policy, in this case on vaccines, on matters COVID, coming from way above a national government. This is back into the globalist agenda.